You are listening to Contesting Wrestling Premium. Today, I, Doc Diamondfire, am here with Dr. Ben Abelson and with Scotland Green once again.
Hello.
Welcome back, Scotland. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing all right.
Hanging
all right.
in there.
Ready to talk some wrestling here?
Indeed.
Hell yeah.
And everybody remember that Scotland is at Mr. Green Mist on Twitch, streaming all sorts of different
And
wrestling.
Instagram.
And Instagram.
It's good to have a consistent handle sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, I can't be Doc Diamondfire on Twitter. I have to be like Dr. Diamondfire, like Dr. Diamondfire, just because it's one too many characters
Oh, I
for
hate
Twitter. Yeah. And I don't want to be Doc Diamond Fur.
You don't want a consistent handle if you're like consistently drinking a handle of gin every day or something like that.
that. Oh,
That's a whole different story. That kind of consistent handle can give you big problems.
yes.
I mean the internet kind of handle, the online handle, if you will.
Yeah.
His
Trucker-like handle.
Yeah, there you go. Handle is kind of an old-fashioned term, but I think people still use it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I remember reading about how it was called a handle in the 90s when I first became aware of the internet. That's true. And so Ben, tell us, what are we watching today?
We are watching today Progress 83, Remove Child Before Ironing.
That's good advice.
It's a nice.
Is that a callback to something? Is that a quote from something?
I have no fucking idea. It's probably, well, I mean, I imagine like there's some kind of like baby onesie or something, and there's a tag on it that has various warnings, and perhaps, and knowing the like litigious nature of our society, perhaps they actually put a warning such as that on some product. I don't know.
You know, every time there's a warning, that means that somebody tried to do the thing on the warning.
Yep. And Sue.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so this is from January 25th, 2019, so just about 2 years ago. And, you know, the funny subtitle speaks to the nature of the Progress Wrestling product. They're a British independent wrestling organization, though with some sort of relationship with the WWE for quite some time now.
This event is on the WWE network as one of their one of the indie shows that they put on, because they have relationships with a few indie promotions.
It was recommended to us by a longtime friend of the show and early guest on the show, Justin Cariaciolo. Justin,
hello.
Thanks for recommending this. Scotland, you know Justin.
I do.
We all went to the
go
same Sunday school together.
Yeah, praise
Something
Jesus.
like that.
Something like that.
So, and he recommended this show, and I'm glad that he did, because it was very enjoyable. But I was suggesting that, you know, the funny nature, the sort of tongue-in-cheek, comedic nature of the subtitle speaks to part of the product, which is that what we get when the show starts is a co-owner of Progress Wrestling, Jim Smallman, who is a comedian. He was a comedian before he was a wrestling promoter.
Okay, there you go. That's because I was wondering. I was like, this guy is doing legit 10 minutes up top.
Right,
like,
right.
10 minutes.
Like I've hosted, you know, thousands of free comedy shows in my life, and you know, you want to do 6 to 8 up top. So I was wondering if there were like wrestlers pacing back there, like, come on.
Though
That's probably better than the owner booking himself to do 20 minutes at the end of the show.
Yeah, that's true. Because he did a good job. I went from hating it to being like, oh, I get it. When he was asking people, have they been there before? Right. Cheer if you've been here. Because that's like straight up comedy show move.
He was pretty funny.
Straight up.
I thought.
Yeah, and he's funny. He did crowd work. What he did was he did host tricks to get everybody into the show that wasn't already into it. He made everybody. It was great. I went from hating it to getting it to being jealous.
And I guess it does
about 5 seconds.
It does two things. It invites the new people into the community, and then it rewards the old people for coming back.
Yeah, and they had their bits that they do up top, you know, like the one rule, don't be a dick. I love that.
No, I love the one guy who like built his entire life, like he planned his college career and education around being able to go to Progress shows. That was fucking cool.
Oh man, I wonder how that's working out for him these days.
You arrange your degree around watching wrestling with 699 drunk people, is how Smallman put it.
Well done.
Sorry, Doc, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I did find that this dragged a little bit. I thought he was very good at it. My problem is that this is a great way to get going for a live audience, but me sitting there watching the show, like on my computer, I'm like, I don't need this guy to hype me up. This guy in the audience isn't going to be buying me drinks.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Not that he bought anybody drinks, but yeah, for 10 minutes, like, okay, that's a perfectly fine way to warm up a crowd. I'm not in a crowd. I'm sitting around watching the WWE Network. I've been to a lot of wrestling shows, where a good host can do this and get the crowd up so that they're already reacting big for the first match and everything. But once again, I don't know how, and I'm not saying don't necessarily do it. I've never seen a Progress show before this. Maybe this is on every one of their shows.
It is.
Probably is.
I had never seen a full Progress show before, except for the one in Brooklyn that I went to, and I remember him doing something like that.
I also went to that, which is crazy that we were at that show before we knew each other.
That is crazy.
That's like a lost. That's like some
before we knew each other as adults. Remember, we discovered that we had gone to Sunday school. But but the main thing that I remember about that show, and it was a good one, but the main thing was how fucking hot that building was. It was the middle of the summer, no fucking AC. One guy
overbooked.
Yeah, right. Overcapacity.
So many people in there.
One guy actually
that was the review that I kept getting.
A dude passed out from heat exhaustion and had to be like carted out of there and shit.
There was like condensation dripping from the ceiling and the walls from people's hot breath.
It sounds like they oversold the place and just let everybody in. Like, that sounds like, oh yeah, let's do it. Let's pack it to the rafters. Yeah, don't do that. Like, actually don't do that. People do get hurt.
Yeah, they were carried out.
So, one last thing about the host. We reviewed that ROH show, All-Star Extravaganza 2, that we had, it was the first one we had attended, and pointed out that when we attended it, it started with CM Punk coming out and talking to the people as like the leader of the locker room and the host of the show. And that was not on the DVD for good reason. Yeah. CM Punk opening the show, they didn't put on the DVD because that was something just for the live crowd, really. And maybe Progress should follow that kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this would have been a lot more interesting if CM Punk had come out.
Yes.
The focus of this certainly would be a little different.
Yeah. He did his 10 minutes up top.
So, thankfully, though that did run a little long, the first match is a hell of a fucking banger.
Yeah.
It really
Great
is.
Start.
We get Timothy Thatcher against Ilya Dragunov. And people might be familiar with Thatcher from NXT and Dragunov from NXT UK. And this is about a year before both of them were signed. Dragunov had what a lot of people thought was the match of the year in 2020 against Walter.
Still haven't seen it. It's on. I gotta watch it.
It is fucking brutal. The only thing I can really compare it to is Joe versus Kobashi.
Shit, I saw that.
But even more brutal, actually, with the chops. It's kind of hard to watch at points, but it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Ilya is full of energy coming to the ring. He's got his like drumming music and he's jumping around and everything. But it doesn't seem forced. Sometimes you'll see an indie guy that doesn't really know what they're doing and they think, oh, I'm gonna have some energy. Yeah. And so they jump around and yell and wave their arms and then there's nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't really do what they think it does. It does do what Ilya thinks it does.
Yeah, he's committed 100%.
He might be the most intense wrestler I've ever seen. And naturally, genuinely intense wrestler. And he doesn't get blown up either, He keeps that intensity throughout the entire match, which wasn't particularly long. But, they were going at a pretty quick pace the whole time.
Yeah.
He's unbesiegbar. Invincible. Or, unbesiegeable in German,
Cool.
And a cool thing about him, so he was born in Russia. When he was 5 years old, he moved to Germany. So he was raised in Germany, but he's Russian ethnically. He is the first true Russian-born wrestler to ever wrestle for the WWE.
Oh, interesting.
Wow. In the history of Russian
with
gimmicks.
all those fucking
really?
Russian gimmicks, which I guess including Vladimir Kozlov, he must have not actually been genuinely Russian born.
Wow. I didn't know
I
that.
have no idea. I know that where was Nikolai Volkov born? He was born in one of the
Croatian,
satellite
I
states,
believe.
right?
I think
He was Croatian. Okay. These two have one hell of a match. Yeah, they beat the crap
They
out of
do,
each other.
yeah.
They keep the pace up the whole time without at any point either of them seeming rushed. They're both very good. Like Timothy Thatcher is very good.
Thatcher's
The worst-
rad. I saw him live a couple years ago at I think it was an Evolve show, and it was the first time I'd ever seen him, and he was. I mean, there's not a lot of people like him. He's good.
He feels like a real fighter. And
yeah. And once again, I was reminded that he's from the United States. I didn't know that.
Born in Sacramento.
Yeah, I assumed he was just like a mean European.
He also moved to Germany. Like he legit.
Oh,
when he wanted to get big
yeah,
in
I didn't know if
the
that was
European wrestling scene.
Kayfabe or not.
No, yeah. He comes out to fucking Dvorak Symphony 9, just like Walter and the whole like Ring Comp crew. I first saw him. I think the first time I saw him was on a PWG show, like their Battle of Los Angeles one year. I think it was like 2007, or 2006 maybe, where I was introduced to like all these guys who would become the big stars of wrestling in the years to come.
Watching Bola is a good way to do that any given year, really.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then I would see him at the Evolve shows. And when I was going fairly regularly at La Boom in Queens, and he was the champion. He's actually, I think, still the longest reigning Evolve champion. I guess he'll be the longest one ever because Evolve has folded. And it was great. It was a nice piece of Gabe Sapolsky booking, where Thatcher was obviously very good, but his matches were not as exciting as Zack Sabre Jr.'s, Matt Riddle's, Keith Lee's, the other guys who were on the card. Drew Gulak, even Johnny Gargano, Drew Galloway. Like, they had a hell of a fucking roster for a little while. And Thatcher...
Yeah, that's the roster when I saw them for the first time.
Word, yeah. And Thatcher was not the most charismatic of them, not the most exciting. His matches were kind of boring compared to everyone else's, and it made him a great heel champion. You'd have a card full of awesome, like, badass matches, and then kind of a disappointing main event. And
well, the idea is you want to see somebody beat him. Yeah, that's kind of that's something I don't hear talked about too much in wrestling fan circles, even when they talk about booking and trying to draw fans to a match that they want to see. Is that match quality isn't irrelevant, but people talk about it like match quality is everything. You don't know how good a match is going to be until it's over.
Yeah,
you get people in the building or watching a show because they want to see somebody achieve something. You have a champion that you want to see beaten, they'll get behind the person trying to beat them. Maybe the match could be a stinker, but if your favorite wrestler finally topples the champion, you're not going to care.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a great moment, and that moment will live forever, even if the match itself is kind of forgotten.
And when Zack Sabre Jr. finally fucking beat him, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it kind of reminds me of what Triple H kind of should have been. Like when Triple H was surrounded by The Rock and Stone Cold and Mick Foley and all those other guys who were better than him and should have beaten him, he was a great heel champion. Once all those guys were gone and it was just Triple H left over, it was like, well, you can't have the one top guy be the boring guy.
Yeah.
Right. It does have to be a group effort with everybody doing their part. And when Triple H was there trying to have good matches with Goldberg and Scott Steiner, it just didn't work.
Oof.
And I love Scott Steiner, don't get me wrong, but his worst work was that WWE run. He was so injured, and he just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And Goldberg could do one thing, and have 20-minute matches with Triple H is not it.
So this match is cool because both guys can strike, they can both grapple, but Dragunov is clearly a little bit better of a striker and Thatcher is a little bit better of a grappler. And they go back and forth like that until they have this great flurry at the end. Well, before that, I love, so Dragunov has a move where he does kind of like a 619, like without hitting the guy, just going through the ropes into.
Just turn around.
Yeah. And that gives him the, what is it called? The tiger feint kick.
Yeah.
And that gives him the momentum to get into a big lariat. And before he actually connects with that move, the first time he tries it, Thatcher immediately grabs him out of the feint kick into a belly-to-belly suplex. That was a cool,
that was dope.
Yeah.
But they have this crazy exchange at the end where, they did a fucking strong style match, right? Where at the end, Dragunov fires up, and he fires up possibly more than anyone else has ever fired up.
He's very fiery.
He's quite fiery, yes, to the point where his skin turns red. And he chops Thatcher. Thatcher no-sells the chop. Saito suplexes him. Dragunov no-sells the Saito suplex.
Yep.
And then he does this wild jumping forearm, which he apparently calls Torpedo Moscow, and that gets him the win. Good stuff.
Yeah, that was great. Great opening. Both those guys just look legit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
neither of them look like they're like crazy characters, or I don't know. I'm trying not to insult them by saying like neither of these guys necessarily look like big stars on the surface until you start seeing them work. A lot of people were surprised when the WWE ended up signing Timothy Thatcher, because as good as he is, like, he's really not that charismatic, unless you really like sink into what he's doing.
But like Ben was saying, like WWE has so many people that they need people to fill that role of being like the serious guy next to all the cartoons. So, like Drew Gulak was doing it for a while,
right.
And it's like
that's very true.
He can be the cartoon too, which is what's great about Drew. But
Drew is very versatile.
I'd say Dragunov is very charismatic. He has a hell of a flair to
I'll
him.
agree with you
And
there.
I think that's part of what makes this match work. Whereas, like, the matches recently between Thatcher and Ciampa on NXT have kind of fell flat for me because they're both kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I haven't seen those.
I saw the first
Well,
one.
that kind of shines a light on the problem with the WWE booking in general, but that's a whole other story. I will refer to you if you'd like to hear about that story every other podcast.
The other thing about this match between Dragunov and Thatcher is they didn't do too much. You know, it's not too long. They do fighting spirit on like one move each at the end of the match. They don't have like a 10-minute fighting spirit sequence, you know. There aren't too many high spots or anything like that, and so the big stuff at the end is meaningful, and they don't burn you out for the rest of the show too, since it's opening fucking match.
Yeah, it was like a 10-minute, 12-minute match, something like that.
You could maybe describe it as an opening match main event.
Yeah.
Because it was perfect as an opening match, but it's like they did do an abridged version of a main event, which is different than them saying, well, we're just going to do a main event up top.
And honestly,
which is not
we'll get
good.
to it, but I thought this was probably the best match on the show. And the main event, I think, was my least favorite match on the show. But we'll get to that. Cool. All right. So next match is Nina Samuels against Laura Di Matteo, who is there with Ginny. Now, I'm familiar with Samuels and Ginny from NXT UK.
Ginny was the only person I immediately recognized. And then the other two, I was like, after I watched the match for a little bit, I was like, I think I might have seen them on UK, but I
don't know about Di Matteo. I would be surprised if she was on NXT UK. I was surprised if the WWE used her at this stage because she's not all that polished. Samuels I had seen mostly as kind of a jobber in UK. Here I thought she was great.
Yeah, she was great.
Just a really great babyface, really great fire. Very much carried this whole match. Ginny, her whole gimmick in NXT UK is she's like a fashionista. Apparently she has a stable here called House Couture. House of Couture. That
Okay.
yeah, and I guess maybe Samuels used to be in House of Couture, but she had broken free.
Okay, so this is like faction drama.
Yeah. DiMatteo, she comes out looking kind of like an MMA fighter, but I don't know. She's a little too small for the gimmick.
Yeah.
Her strikes
Once
don't
she
look
was
that good.
working, she didn't look like an MMA fighter anymore.
I mean, you say she's too small, but like Layla Hirsch is like 5'1",
Yeah.
and and when she gets in the ring, it's like, oh, she's gonna kick your
Yeah,
ass.
Yeah.
too
She
small,
looks
not
serious.
just too short, but like not muscular enough. She doesn't
Yeah.
look like
yeah.
she can kick
She
your
doesn't.
ass.
She's not convincing of it.
Yeah.
She's trying, and maybe she'll grow into it. I don't know.
But-
like I don't watch NXT UK, so I don't know any of.
Yeah,
these
me,
people.
me neither. I had like 2 months of watching NXT UK, and then it was like
Same.
I got other.
Yeah, I
things.
watched the beginning.
I watched-
So I'd seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched the tournament.
Right. And I had seen watching the first 12 episodes maybe of UK. I saw like the women's title tournament. So I think that's where I saw Samuels. Dragunov I've only seen recently. Well, he did a couple of matches on the he wrestled Finn Balor on one of the UK takeovers.
I saw
So
that.
I've seen the UK takeover.
Yeah.
And then I heard about the match with Walter and had to check it out. And it's
Yeah.
pretty badass. But I thought this match had really good structure. And that kind of saved it, despite the fact that DiMatteo wasn't that good. And Samuels, she sold so well that she, even when DiMatteo's offense was kind of rough looking, it still worked because Samuel sold it so well.
And Jenny jumped in there with all of her cheating and heel stuff, and that helped move it along and cover for DiMatteo.
Yeah, they went for a bit of chaos, and I think they succeeded when they tried to do that. Again, not too complicated. They focused on the cheating and the overcoming, and it was fine. Yeah,
I like
that's
the
fine.
finishing spot. So Samuels gets DiMatteo up for a fireman's carry, but DiMatteo keeps struggling out of it, and then finally she goes for like a springboard DDT or something, and it's like the third time Samuels gets her in the fireman's carry and hits her with a Ushigoroshi for the win. So that was cool. And it looked real, it looked like it made sense because Samuels was much more powerful looking than DiMatteo, unlike when, Adam Cole does it to frickin' anybody.
Oh, Adam Cole. I said about Adam Cole when they signed him and then pushed him immediately to the top. It's like he's the kind of guy who goes right to the top and then you're pissed about it, which is exactly what they need, I think. And he's done it for a couple of years. Who knows what the future's going to hold? Because I doubt they'll bring him to Raw and have him beat all of those guys.
Yeah, I think he knows that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. They're in an interesting spot right now with the future of NXT because it's not what it used to be.
Not at all.
And that doesn't mean that it's bad. It just they have to transition it now. They're talking about having kind of another level of developmental league. And you scoff a little bit, Ben, and I understand why. A lot of people do. But I think of like Major League Baseball. They have the AAA leagues, and then they have the AA leagues, and then they have the Single A leagues, and then they have the Bush leagues.
Yeah.
And at every level, the players are objectively and statistically better than the players below. And the WWE is big enough worldwide that they can do that if they want to.
Just
Yeah,
so much
I mean they
fucking
have
shit to
600
watch.
people under contract,
Right.
And
Yeah.
I wouldn't watch it. But I think a lot of those people, especially now, would need more matches under their belt, and that's a place to do it. Like especially when they're pulling people that aren't from wrestling, when they're getting like different kinds of athletes and stuff. You put them in that fed that I will never watch.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they run the risk of bleeding the indies a little bit too dry to the point where
they
A risk? I thought that was the
I
point.
know,
Yeah, that's their business
Well, I
model.
mean, to a certain point, maybe they want to do that, but eventually you stop getting anybody interesting because no one has any experience running the territories anymore.
Yeah. No, that is a problem eventually. And they ran into that when the territories
Right.
dried up. They had to be creative about where they were going to find people for a while, but new sources came.
I mean,
in.
and they figured
know.
out this thing where, like, for instance, with these guys in Progress, where they let them keep doing the indies. even while they're doing
Yeah.
the second or third tier WWE show.
Yeah, it took AEW no time to figure that out.
Yep.
Just, that I remember, when AEW came out, people, I was when it was being developed, like I was still in Chikara, like at the end of my time there, and we were, we had heard, who was coming through, and like we were like, oh, Bryce Remsburg's gonna get signed and everything, and we're like, oh, are we never gonna see these guys again? And then slowly we realized, as they were saying, it's like, well, they haven't told us we can't, and there's nothing in our contract saying that we can't, and now it's like, oh, they're actually independent contractors. Yeah. As long as they don't have dates that conflict with AEW, they can just work.
The only problem...
What a concept.
They have the opposite problem, where they don't actually teach anybody how to work. So...
Well, they don't have a school.
Right. Well, I mean, they do have a school, but they have a school for like...
They're starting
for
to.
like brand
they're
new
starting
guys.
to have...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know like Dustin Rhodes works with people before shows, and they have their Nightmare Family gym and all that
They
stuff.
don't have the finishing school that the Performance Center has.
Right.
Become.
Yeah.
Like, AEW is far from perfect, and I wouldn't be the first person to say one of the problems with it is that once you get past all the top guys that probably should have been on TV for years but weren't, there are a lot of holes in like the nuts and bolts of the work, and if you're a big enough wrestling fan and know what you're looking for, you can see them, and it's the kind of stuff that would fly in front of a live audience that you could do like old school sleight of hand in front of. Mm-hmm. You can't do sleight of hand in front of HD cameras. You can't do sleight of hand in front of Jim Ross, And people complain about Jim Ross, and I'm like, I don't know. Jim Ross is keeping these guys honest. You gotta impress him, because Excalibur's gonna gush all over him, and Tony is just so happy to be there.
Yeah, Tony's
but
loving
Jim
life.
Ross is just gonna be like, well, that missed.
Right.
Come on, guys.
But
they need
to be
that.
fair, WWE is starting to have kind of the same problem, because it seems like their agents have stopped agenting. Like, you watch NXT matches, and it's like, they've got fucking Shawn Michaels there. Shawn Michaels isn't telling anybody to do anything. They're still all just doing whatever they want. And then they come up to the main roster, and this is what happened recently, where Vince was like, Keith Lee needs to go back to the Performance Center for a little while. Because it's like, as great as Keith Lee is, he hasn't really learned, and he is now. But, at the time, like, he hadn't really learned how to work TV the way that Vince really wants people to work TV.
It's that working TV thing. You can't learn to work TV unless you're on TV. There was just an interview with Chris Statlander about the state of the AEW women's division, and she was talking about how, look, there is a big difference in that a lot of the guys had worked TV before, but a lot of the women in the AEW roster just hadn't, and they're learning, and they're coming in before the shows and working out and trying to figure it out, and like, give them some time before you bury the whole thing.
I think the AEW women's division is going to be a slow burn, but they're planning for the future. If you watch AEW Dark, it's half women's matches because they know that's their big hole, so they're trying to get these people to where they need to be, but it's going to take a little bit.
They've also got fucking Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard and Jake Roberts and like
Jerry Lynn and
all these motherfuckers.
Dean Malenko.
Fucking Malenko. And I don't know, are they telling these guys anything? Like,
I'm sure they are, but if you ask Arn Anderson, how do you learn to work? He'd say, oh, well, work 7 days a week. And then he'll acknowledge that you can't do that anymore, but he said he's talked about it. He's like, that's a big disadvantage that people have.
But nobody's telling them, like, maybe don't start the match with a power bomb on the floor that you don't sell and has nothing to do with anything.
Maybe
Kenny Omega.
Maybe.
So
yeah. Well, far be it from any of us to say that Kenny Omega isn't drawing.
No, fair enough. But it's like those, I don't know. For me, a lot of those AEW shows are exhausting because everybody does everything that they want to do. And it's just, there's diminishing returns.
It's true.
All right. Anyway, back to Progress. So our next match, there are two like brawls involving the stable DNR, Do Not Resuscitate. The first one is Eddie Dennis, who is on NXT UK. He was a
one of the worst names in wrestling.
Yes, it's a terrible name.
Eddie Dennis.
He's kind of an interesting guy. He's very tall, but kind of skinny. But he was a math teacher. He trained. He came up with like Pete Dunne and I think Trent Seven maybe, and but then like stopped wrestling and went back to being a math teacher. And then when NXT UK started up, he was like, oh, maybe, oh man, all my friends from back in the day are like getting these big breaks. Maybe I should try doing it again. And ended up getting signed himself. So that's
cool.
Interesting.
Wow.
So he's teaming with Mark Haskins, who I have seen before. He was on that Progress show that we were at, Scotland.
Yeah, he's in Ring of Honor now.
Is he? Okay. And he's there with his rather hot wife, Vicky Haskins, and I guess that's
Mrs. Haskins.
That's why she's there. And you know, he because it's a cool kind of thing, I guess, for the crowd. Like, he's a short, kind of ugly dude who has like a pretty hot wife, and people can get behind that.
Yeah, I suppose that's British. That's a British culture, I think.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So they're against two of these DNR guys. Now, before the announcers kind of explained what was going on, I was very confused because it seemed like there was like the one guy, Drew Parker, was a zombie, and the other guy, Spike Trivette, was like a magician. And I was like, why are they a tag team?
Yeah, I didn't get them at all.
And then the zombie guy took his mask off, and I was like, what do these guys have to do with each other? Apparently, the four guys from DNR are the four pillars of British hardcore wrestling. Oh. They're a stable of guys known for their hardcore shit, or like their deathmatch shit. So that's why they have nothing to do with each other. Kind of explains
the wild brawl that they had.
Yeah, with the two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one, a lot of the story here seems to revolve around the barbed wire bat that Treve brings with him, which is described by one of the announcers as Vicky Haskins' special toy.
I'm just going to leave that hanging there. I'm sure the implications are many. I gotta be honest, you know, a lot of these guys I've either only heard of or maybe I've seen wrestle once, and especially in a match like this where everybody's like brawling, I lose track of who everyone is real quickly, and I lost track of who a lot of the guys were on this show, and like, in terms of watching wrestling, that's just kind of how I do it. When I'm first introduced to a whole glut of people, I'll get more the feeling of the show and the vibe of it before I really pick a bunch of stuff out, especially with these multi-man matches. It's not for every match. Yeah. That opener was incredible, and the match after this one I thought was very good. But like these tag matches and like these guys are all just fighting. I couldn't even tell you who won this match. I gotta be honest. And I watched this today.
Yeah, and none of the teams have no cohesive look. They don't look like
that would
teams.
help. Like if I saw the Killer Bees come out once, I'd know they were tag teaming, even though they both just look like regular guys, you know, because they have their tights and they have their thing going on. Also, they're in their 60s, so that would be unique.
One thing I thought was kind of funny about this match is the referee gets bumped pretty early on, and they're able to have the insane hardcore match. Well, I mean, not that insane, but like they're able to have a hardcore match this entire time because the ref has been bumped and has been out this entire time.
And he was still out halfway through.
That's the one complaint people had at WrestleMania 17. It's like one of the greatest WrestleMania of all time. I haven't put it against a lot of the recent ones, but let's just go with that. One of the biggest complaints with the Triple H versus The Undertaker match in that show is that they do a ref bump and then brawl in the crowd for so long. It's like, man, somebody really needs to check on the ref. You're unconscious for that long. It's really super bad for you.
I watched a match between Loki and the Amazing Red recently from House of Glory.
Yeah.
And they do it, but they made sure to at least give the ref like a devastating, like the ref gets punched in the face with a chair by Loki. And it's like, okay. I can accept him being out for like 20 minutes. Yeah.
The most egregious one of those I've ever seen, I think, and my mother used to go on about this when I'd watch it, was at the Survivor Series one year. They did the Bret Hart versus Bob Backlund I Quit match, and each of them had, it wasn't an I Quit match, they each had a second with the towel that had to get thrown in. And Bret's second was Davey Boy Smith, and at some point, Davey Boy goes chasing Owen Hart around the ring, hits his head on the ring steps, and he's out. and he's literally out for over 10 minutes. He's just laying there motionless. It's like he's dead. Like if you're unconscious for that long without medical attention, is he breathing? Nobody comes out to check on him. They don't have the doctors come out and like stretcher him out. Owen is just concerned. And then,
and that entire time, Brett is in the fucking chicken wing. Like not
I don't even think Brett was in the chicken wing yet.
What?
Was the thing.
Right. He's in
I
it
believe
for like
Brett was distracted from it, and then Backlund grabs him and puts him in the chicken wing. And they do the whole extended chicken wing sequence. Interesting psychology in that, because they proved that Brett just wasn't going to give up with it, but he had to lose eventually, and his mother threw in the towel.
It's not a great match.
Much to the delight of Owen.
It's an interesting one.
No. It's an interesting match, but it's not a great match.
So there was a couple of kind of cool spots in this. They put a shirt over Dennis's face and just pour beer on it.
They're waterboarding.
They hung him from the tree of woe and then they tortured him.
And then they beat him.
The crowd kind of reacted like, because they did this at several indie shows over the last several years, because there was the whole thing with the waterboarding current events, 12, 13 years ago. And the crowds are kind of over it by now, I think. Also, because enough people thought, well, that doesn't look so bad, and they try it, and it is. And, yeah.
I mean, is it waterboarding if you just do it once?
Yeah.
That's true.
People say it's awful like 1 second in. I don't know. I've never let people do it to me because obvious reasons.
Beer, too, getting all in your nose and shit. That'd be pretty
yeah.
So then they beat the shit out of him with the barbed wire bat, and the ref is up just in time for the 2 count. He avoids a second bump, but therefore misses the nut shot to Eddie Dennis, and then Treve rolls him up and pulls the tights, and that's the end of the match.
Yeah.
So I like the little callback.
A lot of fun brawling. Yeah, this was a fun match.
Yeah. I couldn't tell what was who was who or what was going on, but the action was good.
The next match,
and that's more on me,
they announce as the final match of the first half, and I like setting up an indie show like that. There's 2 distinct halves. Me too. You have a nice you can blow out the crowd in the main event of the first half, and they'll recover in time for the second half.
Yeah.
But this one,
that's another Gabe Sapolsky signature.
Yeah, definitely.
He was like, well, we have 2 main events, and people were like, no, you need 1 main event. He's like, no, we're gonna have 2 main events, one before the intermission, and then it goes on.
So speaking of Gabe Sapolsky, one of the guys in this match is Jody Fleisch, who was 38 years old at the time, who I remember from early, like 2003 ROH shows. And the announcers point out that he was one of the guys who kind of like kept the torch lit for British wrestling when it wasn't so popular for a while.
Yeah. He's a real veteran. He's been around for a very long. They mentioned that he had been wrestling for 22 years. So since he was 16, I guess.
Yeah, they start young in England.
Par for the course.
Yeah.
He looked to be in tremendous shape, chiseled abs and everything,
Still, could do all the same fucking high-flying shit. Mad well. And he was against Angelico, who is, a regular in AEW.
Seen on AEW Dark.
Mostly Dark, yeah. Angelico's an interesting wrestler because he's mostly a high flyer, but he does have that like legit lucha training. They mentioned he trained with Ultimo Dragon and Torimon, and so knows like the Yave submission style pretty well, and so does some of that stuff as well. And
he flows like water.
Yeah, and that's basically what ends up winning him the match, right? Fleisch misses a shooting star, and he puts him in what they called the Twisted Deathlock.
It was some kind of leg hold. Some kind of leg kind of key lock. It was a good hold.
Yeah.
And there wasn't much structure to this match. It was just like back and forth spots, but
it was you do it, I do it. You do it, I do it.
But it was kept very short, which made it work. It's just like a flurry of spots until the finish, and they were all impressive. It wasn't too much to blow out the crowd for like the remainder of the show. And it wasn't like totally nonsensical. So yeah, I enjoyed it, even though it wasn't, maybe a great piece of wrestling.
There was no reason for these guys, I think, to go 20 minutes. You know, no, they didn't talk about some big feud they were having or anything. It was the people, I think, wanted to see Jody Fleisch. And Angelico's clearly a major up-and-comer.
Yeah, and he got to beat
this
British, high-flying legend.
Yep.
I really liked Jody did that moonsault off the top into the crowd.
Yes.
Yeah,
amazing. It looked awesome.
Yeah, the announcers going on about Jody Fleisch, like he could still do it. Like he's 38, man. That's not that old, really.
I mean,
not even in like 92 WWF where they bring in Bob Backlund at 42 with 38 be all.
It's not so much the age; it's also having been doing that style for so long.
Right.
Yeah.
And the toll that takes on your body.
And how great he looked.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he looked fantastic. He doesn't miss a lot of gym days, that's for sure.
Clearly not.
And some people will talk about a body like that, like maybe it's chemically enhanced, and maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. But I'd like to point out, as I think we've pointed out on this podcast before, even if you're full of steroids, you still have to go to the gym 4, 5, 6 days a week to get a body like that. If you do a bunch of steroids and don't work out, you're just going to get pudgy and fat, and you will not look like Jody Fleisch does. That's for sure.
All right, so second half of the show starts with the other DNR brawl.
I hate DNR. I needed to hate someone on this show, and I hate them.
This time it was funny hat beard guy and trash raver.
Yep.
Otherwise known,
those Special K kids all look the same.
I think their names were Chuck Mambo and William Reaver. William Reaver was the hat beard guy, and Chuck Mambo was the trash raver who
little dude
who after the match, Jim Smallman made sure everybody knew that someone in the audience had described him as shit Draco Malfoy. So
I do have just the card up. His name is William Eaver.
Okay.
Just Eaver.
I meant to look that up, and then I didn't care enough to remember.
Well, I brought it up. I don't necessarily always do that, but since I couldn't keep track of a lot of these guys, I figure I'd better have their names in front of me.
Yeah.
Now, they were
just in the name of professionalism.
They were against this tag team Aussie Open, Kyle Davis and Mike Fletcher, who I've seen somewhere. But I couldn't remember.
Kyle Fletcher and Mark
I don't
Davis.
know where I've heard of them. Maybe they did like a weird Impact show or something.
Japan,
I don't know.
Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But one of those guys, I believe it was
Davis.
Doug. I thought one of them was named Doug. Oh no, maybe not. Kyle Davis and Mike Fletcher. Who was the one who they called like Aussie Kaiju Monster?
That was Davis, the big man.
Davis.
I liked him. He was impressive.
Yeah, I liked it. The other guy didn't really make much of an impression on me, but that guy when he tagged in for the hot tag and the House of Fire, like I was like, ooh, all right.
Yeah, he did that big like sit down earthquake splash thing. That looked great.
That's always fun. I'll always be happy when I see something like that.
Yeah, me too.
There needs to be more sitting on guys in wrestling.
Apparently, Eaver at some point was spiritual, but now is more ruthless. He had a new attitude.
Okay.
Is that what they call faces and heels in England?
Spiritual.
Yeah, I don't know.
Spiritual and ruthless.
Spiritual. I like it. I'll say, based on this match, this is a lovely crowd. They like everything. They're into everything.
Yeah, they're into
They
it, man.
forgive everything. They totally fucked up the comeback spot here. The crowd immediately forgave them.
This is not the Ring of Honor crowd that it looks like.
Right.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, they're not
It's
mutants. These are nice British boys.
They came to see wrestling, and they're happy that there's wrestling happening. They could be working at the steel mill, and they're not. You know, they're there to see progress. Also, they're pretty drunk by now, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that there's
Also, this is the kind of thing that happens when you have a good host hyping up the crowd, too. That kind of thing lingers. Like, I don't necessarily think they need to put the whole thing on the show for home consumption, but a good host will make the crowd forgive the botched spots because it makes you feel, we're all still in this together.
It's a great vibe for the whole thing.
Great
vibe. You know, something we'd say hosting comedy shows. It's like, yep, you got to get a great vibe. You get
Battered.
If somebody wants to show up and laugh, they will. If somebody wants to show up and not laugh, I don't care how funny you are. You know,
Yep.
they're not
Battered sausage, I think was the chant that the throughout this match.
Yeah, I did not get that.
That sounds
British
thing.
thing.
And then and Smallman replied with, "Could use some topping."
Ah, yes.
One other thing that Davis did, double body slam. Body slam two guys at once. I thought that was...
That's always a good trick.
Yeah, the Aussie guys eventually win with this like double electric chair driver thing. It was cool.
Yeah.
Another thing
Might be my least favorite match of the night, maybe.
Yeah?
I don't have too much to say about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it wasn't bad or anything. It's just
Yeah.
compared to the other ones, it didn't have that much for me.
It was
Although I did like the big man doing big man things.
Yeah. One other thing I want to point out. So they allow cursing on these shows. They don't bleep out.
That was yeah.
So the announcers say shit at some point here, and later on in the next match, so Chris Ridgway is apparently hard as fuck. He's a black belt in being hard as fuck, and he says that, and they don't bleep it at all, and the crowd chants hard as fuck throughout the entire match. That was cool. Good for WWE.
Yeah, I'm glad I wasn't watching that with my grandson.
So this match is interesting.
You got into it young, did you, Scott?
So Chris Ridgway is wrestling Shugehiro Iri. I seem to have...
Iri or Iri?
Shugehiro Iri, yeah. And who's like a big, Japanese dude.
Big Japanese
really big
dude.
Japanese dude. Chris Ridgway is like, he has an interesting kind of like frenetic, striking, and technical style. The problem with him for me is he just looks like everybody else. Like,
yes. Shigehiro here and Jody Fleisch, I think, are the only two people on the show that aren't white guys.
Yep. I was about to say that.
Or white women in the one
like
women's
the
match.
problem with NXT UK. It's like the whitest show since NWA Power.
like white,
and
white
part
beard,
of me
black
says,
tights.
NWA Power, like the women's division in NWA Power was almost exclusively non-white people.
That's true.
This show was much whiter even, and part of me says I understand because it's they're in Europe where the white people are. On the other hand, I'm like, there's a lot of non-white people in England.
NWA Power
there's no
had
Indian
Ricky
people on this
Starks and
show.
Homicide and
like they couldn't find one Indian guy, That's what I'm thinking.
Right.
Jody Fleisch is black, but Jody Fleisch is also like one of the heavy vets of the UK scene. They couldn't find another
he worked
British
for
black guy.
20-something years.
We should point out, this show was in January 2019. It's luckily, and that's why it's on the network, a show from that period of time that doesn't have any of the people on it who have been canceled from the British wrestling scene.
Yes, that was what I thought when you first told me that this was the show. I was like, uh-oh, are we going to see like a parade of canceled
Travis Banks was the
wrestlers?
champion at the time, but thankfully he's not on this show, or unless they cut his match.
There's Will Ospreay, but that's not as severe as some of the other guys.
Yeah, that's like a second hand.
He's been accused of blackballing a certain woman who complained. Well, you can look that up if you want.
Yeah.
I will misrepresent some of the details, and I
been-
don't want to do that. Ospreay has kind of gotten a pass by a lot of people simply because he's so good, and you're not going to convince me that there's any other reason.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because there's certain.
He's not charming. He's dumb as fuck, but he's a good.
But he's
wrestler.
very good.
Yeah.
You can't say that he's not.
No, there is quite a bit of rot in the British wrestling scene, and
Yes.
it's being excised to some degree. But who knows how deep it runs. And so,
But right, not Travis Banks, like none of those guys.
yeah, or Marty Skrull, or
Marty Skrull,
yeah.
right?
Or
I
Jordan
bet you the WWE.
or Jordan Devlin, who's still wrestling for WWE.
Yeah.
I bet you the WWE hires Marty Scurll. Because Marty Scurll's reputation is shot, but like he said, he didn't break any laws.
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
all
That's
the
all they care
WWE cares about.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
they've got
all
Matt
they care
Riddle
about.
there. I mean, that's a
Yeah, they
complicated
got Velveteen
situation.
Dream. for
Velveteen
God's
Dream,
sakes.
right? Yeah. Ugh.
I haven't heard much. I mean, I haven't been watching the WWE product much. Is Dream still like on NXT every week?
Yeah, he came
was
back.
until fairly recently.
Like he's definitely fallen down the card a bunch.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
he doesn't
You know,
have that crowd support. Something about wrestling,
Yeah.
which and we're going to talk to Evan about this a bit more. I was meaning to bring it up again.
Yeah.
Is there something about the wrestling community where like we have it at least not visibly, we don't see a lot of like hardcore right wingers and like QAnon people get any kind of play.
Yeah.
You know, the wrestling community has been, very quick to cancel people who obviously should be and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Well, the underground wrestling community especially has been progressing and changing a lot
Yeah.
over the last
Since
10 years.
when we were kids, it was like
Yeah.
those 90s fans. Holy shit.
That's a whole different
and
story.
like
yeah.
you can keep someone around like Velveteen Dream or Matt Riddle, but if they don't have that undercurrent of support from the fan base, like they're gonna fizzle out eventually just on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like a guy like Velveteen, I've read that people in the locker room don't like him now. He doesn't have like support in the locker room because people are like, that creep?
Yeah. And like Matt Riddle, like he went out of his way to get people to not like him before, and he was just going to rely on the fact that he was so good. Now, but he's fizzling out too, despite the fact that he's a good wrestler. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to the UFC because the UFC just announced that they're going to stop testing people for
Right.
weed, which was his big problem.
Oh, wow.
He was like, I'm not going to stop smoking weed. Like in the WWE, you can get away with paying a fine. But in the UFC, it'd get suspended. And
Specifically,
yeah.
Dana White like said to him like, "There's no way you're ever gonna make this much money anywhere else." And Riddle was like, "All right, we'll see." All right, so this match, it's cool. Yeah, like they Ridgeway does a lot of cool technical stuff. Ire has some cool high impact moves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great
I
impact.
was
He had
impressed.
good splashes and
I like
and suplexes.
I like Erie pretending that he can't understand the referee's English when he's counting at him in the
Right.
corner. The joke being, of course, because in Japan they count in English.
Right. Everybody knows it when if you watch
So the
porn.
referee doesn't buy for a second that he can't understand the count. He does that crazy cannonball in the corner that like a lot of people do,
yeah.
but it was like incredibly.
it looked great.
If you do something everyone does better than everyone else,
I want to
great.
point out he does the Taz Mission or Kate Hajime, which the fucking idiot announcer calls a Cobra Clutch.
Oops. Not quite the same
Yeah,
thing.
he says like he calls an STF like some kind of like crossface or deathlock. It's a fucking STF. Fucking John Cena does it. I don't know. I don't know who the announcers were, but I was very frustrated with one of them, with the lack of knowledge of one of them. And when he was doing the Kata Hajime, he did it from a fireman's carry position at one point. He like threw him down and then he did like a fireman's carry Michinoku driver right into the Kata Hajime. I thought that was cool too. In the end, there's a whole big flurry, and Ridgeway ends up hitting 2 PKs, 2 penalty kicks, and the second one wins it. I have a lot of feelings about that. So, like, the PK can look really devastating if you hit it really well, but it can also, not look that good. And the second one here that ended the match didn't look that good, and the finish felt a little anticlimactic because of it. And so, like, I mean, I don't know, like, also, like, that's one of Zack Sabre Jr.'s finishers. Ridgeway comes off to me a little bit like Tyler Black did in Ring of Honor, where he seems like he was a really big fan of the just previous generation of wrestlers and does a bunch of stuff because he's a mark for it. And it's like, it's too soon. It's like I've already seen. I've just already seen all that stuff. You know.
Someone do it. You've seen someone do it great.
Right. Right.
And now,
exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, he obviously a super talented guy, but he's got to figure out his own identity, I think.
Yeah, I liked this match. It was surprising because when it was starting, I was like, oh, let's just get to the main event. You know, I don't know either of these guys, but yeah, I liked it. I liked Erie more, for sure. But
yeah, definitely.
The fucking one of the announcers was having a stroke putting over Ridgeway, like he was pushing him real hard. I was like, okay, I get it. You like this dude, but
it's funny. Like in the beginning when they said the black belt line, I think it was their accent, but I thought he said black belt of being hot as fuck.
I mean, he could have, but
and I was like, oh, I legit thought he was like some kind of model gimmick.
So I actually put on the subtitles. Because I wanted to see how they interpret it, and it said hard.
Yeah, I didn't know.
It said hard as F .. So I was like, oh, okay. That is what they're saying.
Yeah, my notes say hot as fuck.
Hard as fuck is quite a phrase there to describe yourself in wrestling of all things. Okay, so our main event is for the Progress Tag Team titles. It's the team of CCK. I have no idea what that stands for. Chris Brooks and Kid Lycos, who I had seen once before in Chikara King of Trios, the one year they were in England. And they're going up against Swords of Essex, the aforementioned Will Ospreay and Paul Robinson. And man, do these guys come off as fucking asshole heels.
Yeah.
From the beginning.
Paul Robinson just looked like a prick.
He looks like a little fucking prick. He really does.
Yeah, he's like wrestling with the chain on. He just looks like an asshole.
There's a guy in the crowd who looks a little bit like our friend Fesh, giving him the finger. And Robinson comes and like bites the dude's finger. And the dude seems like taken aback by this. And Robinson's like, fine, you get a free shot. Slap me. And the fan actually slaps him very gently, and then he fucking like really slaps the fan. Damn!
You mentioned
you have
like,
to know your
litigious
crowd is
society.
really fucking cool if you're gonna get away with that kind of shit.
Yeah.
You have to understand when you say our litigious society, that's America.
Right.
That's not Europe. Like, it's not that they don't have lawyers and litigate in Europe, but like they don't do it like that. You know, there is a line you can't cross, but they engaged with each other. I remember years ago, like the singer Bjork, right, got into a fist fight with a photographer at an airport.
Yes. Classic YouTube video.
Yeah, and I remember hearing the follow-up. You know, they interviewed Bjork a few weeks later. It's like, well, are your lawyers going to like... And she said, no, I had lunch with her. We worked it out. That was the beginning and the end of it. You know, we were like, so we had a fight. Let's deal with it.
I got a lunch
like
with Bjork.
Adults, you know. Right. You got a lunch with Bjork out of it. And I was always very impressed by that, you know, being in America where everybody, not only are we so litigious, but we see it as some kind of lottery ticket, as though like, oh, you could sue somebody for millions of dollars.
Yeah. Oh, I finally have an excuse.
Yeah, right.
First of all, the lawyers are going to take it. Second of all, unless the other person has millions of dollars, you ain't getting anything. So don't clog up the court systems with stupid crap where, you know, don't bring something to trial that should be a conversation.
Right.
And that's my advice for the day. Anyway, back
and
to
also
this main
like
event
in other
title
countries,
match.
like they expect people to have some kind of common sense. Anyway, so at this point, Ospreay, besides being Progress Tag Champs with Robinson, is also the Never Champ. From New Japan.
I'm like such a mark for that stuff. First, I was like, oh, swearing on the WWE Network, and then I was like, Ospreay on the WWE Network, and then I'm like, the Never title.
And I had seen him just about a week before that in Japan beat Kota Ibushi at Wrestle Kingdom. And Ospreay's a heel in Japan, but he fucking amped up the fucking volume on the heeldom in this match, big time.
It's a whole different psychology. You know, here he's like top heel where he wants everybody to hate him.
Yeah.
So he's not pulling out all of his crazy stuff necessarily. He's not necessarily trying to have the great match that'll pop the crowd. Whereas when he's in New Japan, his MO is clearly to have the greatest match he can against the greatest competition in the world.
I see it a little bit differently here. And this is, I'm going to get into my criticism of the match. So, in terms of their mannerisms, great fucking dipshit heel, like arrogant heel shit. In terms of the wrestling, there is no heel or face or match structure whatsoever here. They just do fucking moves. And it really feels like maybe he's not trying to go for the greatest match ever, but it really feels like he's like, oh, there's no one to tell me not to just do whatever fucking move I want at whatever time here. You know, in New Japan, I have to work with Ibushi, you know.
Yeah, you got to do his moves.
Yeah. He's in a different spot when he's showing up in Progress.
If I work when he worked with Amazing Red, like Red had to like tone him down a little bit, you know. Here,
great art is done through restriction,
shit.
Not freedom.
Right, and he has total freedom here, and you can see it. You know, and they just do too much. The match is too long. There's a lot of fucking awesome spots. But yeah.
They do the goofy resistance band. Thing.
I want to talk about that because I was in Japan like a week before that for Wrestle Kingdom, and when I was in Osaka, I went to a Dragon Gate show, and they were doing the resistance band thing like the same spots at the Dragon Gate show, and the announcers here actually mention that that's a Dragon Gate thing, and that CCK had spent some time in Dragon Gate, so this was Swords of Essex, sort of like you know. I don't know, rubbing it in there. Yeah, I don't know, like doing it at their expense.
Cool.
And yeah, so you take the resistance band, just for those who haven't seen this, and the one team member puts the one end by the guy's face, and the other team member runs really far away to pull it to like its complete resistance, and then lets go of the band so it snaps right into the dude's face. Then the next spot is they try to do it again, and Ospreay tried to go as far back as possible, so he wasn't looking at one point when like the other partner came in to break the side, to like disengage the one side from the guy's hand, so it ends up snapping the opposite way right into Ospreay's face. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Good backfire.
Yeah, CCK I don't quite get. Chris Brooks, like he's another one of these guys, like Eddie Dennis is really tall but kind of thin, but he still looks really strong. Brooks is really tall, and I mean, he still looks kind of strong, and I was a little confused because at the beginning of the match, he acts like he's way stronger than Robinson. But then pretty much immediately starts selling for everything Robinson does. And like, you don't have to no sell. And I get it. He's not that thick. He's kind of skinny. So maybe you can do some damage to him, but you got to find like a middle ground there. You know, like you shouldn't sell everything that a guy half your size does to you.
Yeah. Like besides
like
being
that,
tall,
no.
he didn't work like he was tall.
Exactly. But then he did right at the beginning, and then he forgot about it immediately after.
Yeah, because they had that stare down where you saw the height difference, and it was like, oh my god, look at this dude.
Yeah, and then that wasn't the story anymore. You know, like that stuff really kind of bothers me. So this whole match really kind of bothered me, even though there was some cool stuff.
Yeah, there was cool stuff.
Yeah.
There was that sunset bomb by Ospreay where he like threw Lycos onto Brooks pretty much.
Yeah, on the floor, yeah.
On the outside,
and all the stuff off of people's shoulders.
Oh yeah, there was a real scary one where he almost didn't make it.
Yeah, it was Robinson on Ospreay's shoulders, I think, and he flung him out of the ring. Yeah, they do a double stomp diamond cutter. I think it was Robinson doing the diamond cutter and Ospreay doing the double stomp on Chris Brooks and ended up winning the match. So, which is probably the right result. I I didn't
Yeah.
think CCK should be.
I mean,
beating
I don't
Swords
know
of
what the
Essex.
booking is.
Yeah.
Like long term, so I would presume
was-
so, but yeah,
I
don't
kind
know.
of thought CCK was going to win because I was thinking like, oh, they're going all out with this match. Maybe it's because like Ospreay isn't going to be around very much anymore, and they want to just like get all their shit out there and like have the match they've always wanted to have together. But then Swords of Essex won, and I was like, oh, all right, no, they just
Yeah, I didn't know Ospreay did that much with Progress because I know at some point he had to just be kind of exclusive to Rev Pro in England. So
right,
yeah,
because New Japan has more. Of a
there were
relationship.
several big leagues in England. I don't know the scene. Not only did it get a, not only did the speaking out movement really focus on the British wrestling scene, but the WWE just kind of showed up and treated it like the territories, and that was that.
Ate
you
'em
know?
up. Yeah.
Well, Progress has
Yep,
their
ate 'em right
relationship
up.
with WWE, and so does ICW,
Yeah.
which is in Ireland.
Yep.
But Rev Pro has always had a relationship with New Japan.
New Japan. Yeah,
Right. When New Japan says like the British champion, they mean the Rev Pro
Right.
champion. Yeah. So shortly after this show, and I was looking some stuff up, and like I'm kind of just confirming it now. Kid Locos retired due to various horrible injuries. He's had a couple of matches since then. He came back.
They said, the announcer said that he had just come back from injury for this show.
He missed most of 2018. He wrestled for a few months in 2019 and got injured and stopped. According to Cage Match, he had a few matches in 2020 at like a Chris Brooks farewell event in February, and that was it.
So
He
Chris Brooks retired too?
I don't know what happened to Chris Brooks. I don't know if he got signed somewhere or what, but that's what Cage Match is saying. I'm unfamiliar with the scene. If somebody can hear, if one of our premium listeners can hear this that knows, tell me.
Well, this is what
but yeah,
happens when you don't know how to work and you just do high spots all the time. And you keep getting injured, and then you can't fucking stop doing the high spots because you don't know how to do anything else.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, eventually age catches up to you. I mean, Kid Lycos, he was wearing a mask, but you can't tell. He's 22.
Damn. I just looked it up, by the way. CCK.
Yeah, he'd already been wrestling almost 10 years.
CCK stands for Calamari Catch Kings.
Oh, I never would have guessed that.
Never in a million years.
And Travis Banks is actually
they-
the other member of the trio.
Are they a fishing team?
Well, Catch, I guess, has like catch wrestling.
Right.
Yeah.
So do they wrestle fish then?
Well,
do they
I
wrestle?
think, like-
okay, calamari, like they're octopuses,
Yeah,
so they
so
have
they
like
can,
tentacles.
Though aren't
Yeah.
squid? Isn't calamari squid?
It might be squid.
But also squids have tentacles, so I guess they could wrap you up too.
They do.
But like these
Okay, I
guys
guess
aren't
that
fucking
doesn't-
catch wrestlers at all.
Right. Well, in America, catch is like this European gimmick, and in Europe it's just wrestling. The German catch style, right? We'd call it catch as catch can here because we like sayings, I think.
Yeah,
I've
it sounds
recently
cool.
looked into this, and that's the most I can find. But yeah.
And when I was in France, even as a little kid, my cousin Bernard, who lives there, who's an older guy,
Yeah.
like my mom's age, he would be like, "Oh, you like le catch?" Like that's what they call
yeah.
wrestling in like any pro wrestling,
Yeah.
any wrestling whatsoever in France is still
Right.
catch.
Le catch.
Catch.
Okay, well, that's this show, and I enjoyed it.
Definitely.
Even if I didn't think it was the greatest show in the world or anything. I don't necessarily think it was a great entry point if I wanted to become a fan of Progress, because I just couldn't wrap my head around a lot of these guys. If I watched a bunch of shows like this, I think I'd be more excited about like some of the guys that I'm kind of dismissive of right now.
I thought it had some good variety to it as a show.
Yeah.
Each match was a little different except for like the two brawls. But it kind of went backwards for me. Right? Like I liked the
Started
earlier
great.
stuff
Yeah,
better
yeah.
than the later stuff.
I
Yeah,
liked
me
it.
too.
I was just happy that it wasn't a show from 1982.
Quite a contrast to the stuff we've done with you previously. Scotland.
Hey, maybe we could find like a World of Sport show from 1982 and watch it. That would probably be real interesting.
We got to do some
more
classic
catch.
British wrestling. I mean, that's one of the things we still have to show Evan as part of the main feed, but we can do some of it here as well.
Yeah,
We'll
see some
see how
Big
it goes.
Daddy.
Some Big Daddy.
Big Daddy.
Yeah.
Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks. That was kind of the end of the popularity of the old-time British wrestling style. Like, Big Daddy was a big star and everything, but, man, he couldn't do anything.
No.
And but that was kind of the point. You know, neither could Hulk Hogan, and he was a huge star in America.
Yeah, they just loved him.
They just loved him. Okay, so I guess we'll wrap things up. You know, that's thanks. I'm sorry, Ben. Who suggested the show to us again? Justin. Yes,
Thank you.
Justin. Thank you very much, Justin, for suggesting this show. It's cool. I always felt like I should have gotten more into Brit Res, but considering recent events, maybe it's good that I spent my time doing other things. But progress is cool. Maybe I'll watch more of this on the network. Maybe I'll try and figure out who some of these guys are. I definitely have to go watch Ilya Dragunov versus Walter.
Same.
I haven't seen it either. I've seen a couple of clips, and it looked like Joe Kobashi, except a little more modern.
That'll be our
I've seen Joe
homework.
Kobashi enough times. That'll be our homework. Cool. That's on the network. Scotland, thank you very much for coming down again.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure. So much fun.
Yeah, now that we're getting Evan back on some episodes, where we may develop a stable of semi-regulars around here because we're not going anywhere. Do you have any last words, either of you?
Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick.
And I just want to thank our Patreon subscribers for continuing to support
thank you
us.
very much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we have a lot more cool stuff coming up for you in the future. So stay tuned.
Oh yeah, 2021 is just getting started. We're getting revved back up. We're kind of ready to not be as self-indulgent as we've been over the last couple of months. We needed to get out of our system, and we have. So excellent. All right, well, this has been Contesting Wrestling Premium. Thank you everybody so much for listening, subscribing, and patronizing us. Patronizing?
Patronizing?
There is a proper word here. And
Well,
neither of us are
patronizing
getting it.
is a word. Like patron is a word.
Yes.
I don't think Patreon is actually a word.
Patreon.
No, I don't think so.
But
either.
now that it is, I guess there is also Patreoning or patronizing.
Well, thank you for Patreoning us. We will see you all next time. Thank you. We love you.
Peace.
Good night.